The sound of the grocery store felt different that day. The soft hum of carts rolling, the faint buzz of a refrigerator somewhere in the back, and the quiet chatter of people talking over fruit and prices. It all blurred together. But for some reason, Emily couldn't focus on any of it. She had only come to grab a few things: bread, milk, and cereal. That's all. Just another normal errand, something small to keep her mind busy. Lately, her life had become a collection of small things. She tried to stay distracted, tried to move forward. Everyone told her that time would help. But time had done very little. It had been 6 months since she lost her baby. The world around her had kept moving, as if nothing had happened. Cars still honked, people still laughed, and the seasons still changed. But for her, it was like time had frozen. She woke up every morning to the same emptiness. The nursery that once smelled like new blankets and baby powder now smelled like dust. Her heart felt heavy every time she walked past that closed door. She told herself that she was healing, but healing didn't feel like this. Pushing her cart slowly through the aisle, she reached for a box of cereal when a sound stopped her cold. It was faint at first, a soft whimper that grew into a baby's cry. Her body went still. The sound cut through her chest like lightning. She knew it was silly. Babies cried all the time. But this sound was different. There was something about it. Something familiar. She turned her head, trying to find where it came from. At the end of the aisle near the fruit section, a young woman stood holding a baby in her arms. The baby was wrapped in a light pink blanket. The woman was gently bouncing her, whispering something soothing. Emily froze, her hand still on the cereal box. Her heart started to beat faster and she couldn't understand why. Maybe it was the way the baby's little hands moved, or the sound of that cry. It hit something deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in months. She watched as the woman smiled down at the baby, rocking her gently. Emily felt her eyes burn with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. She didn't want anyone to see. She looked away, pretending to focus on the cereal boxes again, but her mind refused to move on. That sound, it was just like her daughter's cry. Her daughter, Sophie. She whispered the name in her mind like a prayer she wasn't supposed to say out loud. Taking a deep breath, she tried to shake it off. "It's just a baby," she told herself silently. "You're imagining things." But something in her heart said otherwise. She pushed her cart slowly toward the next aisle, trying not to look again, but she couldn't help it. She glanced over her shoulder and saw the baby's tiny face. Just a glimpse. The baby had the softest gray-blue eyes Emily had ever seen. Her chest tightened. Sophie had those same eyes. The world around her suddenly felt distant, like she was underwater. People moved and talked, but she couldn't hear them. She couldn't think. Her hands trembled as she gripped the cart. It couldn't be. Sophie was gone. She had seen her baby's still body at the hospital, wrapped in a small white blanket. The nurses had told her she didn't make it, that her heart had stopped, that there was nothing more they could do. Emily had cried until she couldn't breathe, until her voice broke. And yet, seeing that baby now, it made her question everything. The young woman noticed Emily staring and smiled politely, before turning her attention back to the baby. Emily felt her cheeks flush. She didn't want to seem strange or intrusive. She tried to look away, but her curiosity kept pulling her back. The woman started to adjust the blanket around the baby's chest, tucking it carefully. That's when Emily noticed it. Something small glinting in the light. A necklace. A tiny silver chain with a little heart charm. Emily's breath caught. It looked exactly like the necklace she had given Sophie. She had placed it around her baby's neck just hours after giving birth. The charm had the letters ST engraved on it, her daughter's initials. It was her way of keeping a piece of herself close to her baby. Her hands went cold. She blinked, trying to make sure her eyes weren't playing tricks on her. But no, she could see it clearly. That little silver heart shimmered as the baby moved. Her thoughts started to spin. She took a small step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Excuse me." The woman turned, smiling kindly. "Oh, hi," she said, adjusting the baby on her shoulder. Emily's throat tightened. She couldn't find her words. She stared at the necklace, then at the baby. "She's beautiful," Emily finally said, forcing a small smile. "Thank you," the woman replied warmly. "She's my little angel." Emily nodded, her heart pounding. "How old is she?" "Almost 6 months," the woman said. "She was born in March." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Sophie was born in March, too. The woman noticed her silence and chuckled softly. "She's a handful, but I can't imagine life without her." Emily nodded again, her lips dry. She wanted to ask more, but her voice refused to come out. "She looks familiar," she said finally, her tone shaking. The woman smiled, a little confused. "Oh? Maybe she reminds you of someone." Emily could barely breathe. "Yes," she whispered. "She does." The woman glanced down at the baby and adjusted her little hat. The baby yawned softly, her lips curling in a way that made Emily's chest ache. It was the same expression Sophie had when she stretched after a nap. The same. Exactly the same. Emily felt her vision blur as tears filled her eyes. She quickly blinked them away and forced another smile. "She's lovely," she said softly, trying to sound normal. "Thank you," the woman replied again. "I'm lucky to have her." There was warmth in her tone, genuine love in her eyes. Emily could feel it, and it only made her heart twist even more. She wanted to ask about the necklace. She wanted to ask where she got it, what the initials meant, but she couldn't. What if she was wrong? What if it wasn't Sophie's necklace? She didn't want to scare the woman or seem insane. Instead, she just stood there for a moment, smiling through her pain. The woman said goodbye and walked toward the checkout line, holding her baby close. Emily watched them leave. Her feet wouldn't move. She felt frozen, her mind spinning in circles. When they were gone, she leaned against the shelf, her hands trembling. Her chest felt tight, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She took out her phone, staring at the screen without really seeing it. Her reflection looked pale and lost. The necklace, the eyes, the age, the same month. It was too much to be coincidence. But how could it be real? She remembered that night in the hospital vividly. The chaos, the beeping machines, the nurse who told her everything would be okay. Then the sudden silence, the doctor's heavy words, and the way her world collapsed in seconds. She had asked to hold her baby one last time, but they said it wasn't possible. They said she needed to rest. She had trusted them. Now, standing in the middle of a grocery store with shaking hands and a pounding heart, she wasn't so sure anymore. Emily left her cart where it was and walked outside. The cool air hit her face, but it didn't calm her down. She stood by her car, staring at nothing. Her thoughts were wild, tangled between grief and disbelief. She needed answers. She didn't know how or where to start, but something inside her told her that this wasn't over. The image of that baby, the same eyes, the same necklace, was now burned into her mind. She couldn't ignore it. Not this time. As she sat in her car, she whispered softly to herself, "If that really was you, Sophie, if you're out there, I'll find you." And for the first time in months, there was a spark of something new in her chest. Not just pain. Hope. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling heavy. Her mind replayed the moment from the grocery store again and again, the way the baby had looked at her, the tiny silver heart on that delicate chain. She couldn't shake it off. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea she didn't even taste. The world outside moved as if nothing had happened. Cars passing, birds calling, but everything inside her had changed. There was a quiet ache sitting in her chest, one that refused to leave. She had tried to tell herself she was imagining things. It was just a coincidence, she thought. Lots of babies had silver necklaces. Lots of people bought jewelry that looked alike. But no matter how hard she tried to convince herself, Something inside her wouldn't agree. It wasn't just the necklace, it was the baby's face. Something about her eyes, the shape of her lips, the tiny dimple that appeared when she smiled. It all felt too familiar. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. She opened the photo gallery. There, hidden in a folder she hadn't opened in months, were pictures of her daughter, the little girl she had lost only days after birth. She stared at the photos, tears filling her eyes. Her daughter had the same eyes, the same dimple, even the same small birthmark near her ear. Her throat tightened. It can't be, she whispered to herself. But her heart whispered back, what if it is? She needed to know. Later that day, she decided to go back to the grocery store. Maybe she'd see that woman again. Maybe she could ask her where she got the necklace, anything to make sense of what she had seen. When she walked into the store, her heart pounded. Every aisle looked the same, every face ordinary, but her eyes searched desperately for that one person. After almost half an hour, she finally spotted her near the produce section. The same woman, with the same baby strapped against her chest in a carrier. Emily froze. She wanted to run up, to ask her everything, but fear held her back. What if she scared the woman? What if she was wrong? She took a slow breath and walked closer, pretending to look at some apples. The woman turned, smiling politely. Hi there, she said softly. We seem to be grocery shopping at the same time again. Emily smiled back nervously. Yeah, looks like it. The baby turned her head then, looking right at Emily. Their eyes met and the world seemed to pause. The little girl giggled softly, reaching her tiny hand toward Emily's necklace. It was a small moment, but it broke something open inside her. She's beautiful, Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. Thank you, the woman said warmly. She's my whole world. Emily hesitated, then asked carefully, how old is she? She just turned 6 months, the woman replied, smiling proudly. 6 months. Emily's heart skipped. That was exactly how old her daughter would have been. The woman continued. We adopted her a few months ago. It's been a blessing. We were told she came from a difficult situation, but she's such a happy baby. Emily felt dizzy. Adopted. She tried to keep her voice steady. That's wonderful. She's lucky to have you. Thank you, the woman said sincerely. She came through a private agency. Everything was handled so well. We don't know much about her birth mother, just that she was very young. Emily could barely hear the rest. Her ears rang, her vision blurring for a moment. She muttered a polite goodbye and left the store quickly, tears stinging her eyes. Once she got to her car, she broke down. The pieces were starting to come together and they terrified her. A baby born 6 months ago. Adopted through a private agency. A silver necklace that was supposed to be buried with her daughter. It all lined up. She wiped her tears with shaky hands and drove home, her mind spinning. She needed to find her hospital papers. Anything that could prove what really happened that night. When she got home, she opened the drawer where she kept everything from that time. Old documents, discharge papers, sympathy cards from friends. It had all been too painful to look at before, but now she tore through it desperately. Her eyes stopped on the hospital certificate, the one that listed her baby's time of birth and death. But something caught her attention this time. A faint smudge near the signature. The nurse's name, she frowned. She had seen that name before. She grabbed her phone, searching the name online. A chill ran through her when she saw the result. The nurse now worked for an adoption agency. The same one the woman had mentioned at the store. Emily felt her whole body go cold. It couldn't be a coincidence. She sat there, the papers spread out around her, tears streaming silently down her face. What did you do? She whispered. Her phone buzzed with a message from her friend. Are you okay? You haven't been answering calls. Emily stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. No, I think my baby is alive. Her friend didn't reply right away, probably thinking she was imagining things again. But Emily didn't care anymore. She knew what she had seen. Her hands were shaking as she whispered to herself, I'm going to find you, no matter what it takes. She picked up the small keepsake box she had made for her baby. Inside it was a hospital bracelet, a photo and a single silver earring that matched the necklace. Holding it close, she closed her eyes. I'm coming for you, my love, she said softly. Outside, Rain began to fall, tapping gently on the window, as if the world itself was listening. She didn't know what she would face or how far she'd have to go. But she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over, because now she had hope. And hope, she realized, was stronger than fear. Emily stood in the kitchen that evening, staring at the small silver chain lying in her hand. She had gone home from the grocery store hours ago, but her mind hadn't rested since. That image of the baby, the pink blanket, the gray-blue eyes, the shining heart necklace. It kept replaying like a loop she couldn't stop. She hadn't even unpacked her groceries. The bag still sat near the counter untouched. She just sat there for hours trying to make sense of what she saw. Could it really be possible? Her mind told her it couldn't. Babies died. That was what the doctor said. That was what the papers said. That was what everyone around her told her to accept. But her heart said something different. She looked down at the old photograph on the table, the one picture she had of her baby, taken right after birth. Her tiny hand gripping Emily's finger. Around her neck, barely visible, was the same silver chain she had worn that day, the same one she had seen shining in that store. Emily took a shaky breath and rubbed her forehead. "Maybe I'm losing my mind," she whispered. But deep inside she knew she wasn't imagining it. The next morning she couldn't think of anything else. She told herself she wouldn't go back to that store, that it would only make things worse. But by afternoon, she found herself driving there again. She told herself it was just to pick up the milk she'd forgotten. But that wasn't true. Her eyes scanned the parking lot as she pulled in. She didn't even know what she was hoping for. The odds of running into the same woman again were tiny. Still, something inside her pushed her forward. She walked through the aisles, her heart beating fast. She tried not to look obvious, but every mother she passed made her pulse quicken. Every baby's cry made her flinch. Then, near the back of the store by the frozen food section, she saw her. The same woman. The same baby in her arms. Emily froze for a moment, gripping the edge of her cart. The woman was smiling, talking softly to the baby, who giggled and reached for her necklace. That necklace. It caught the light again, and Emily's stomach dropped. She stepped closer before she could stop herself. "Hi," she said, trying to sound casual. The woman turned, her smile polite. "Oh, hello again," she said. "You were here the other day, right?" Emily nodded quickly. "Yes, I was. I think I saw you in the cereal aisle." The woman laughed softly. "Yes, I remember. What a small world." Emily's heart thudded painfully. She forced a smile. "Your little one looks happy today." "She's been in a good mood this morning," the woman said warmly. "She usually gets fussy around nap time, but we're doing okay." Emily hesitated. Her eyes dropped to the necklace again. It was right there, the same little silver heart with the initials engraved faintly. Her throat tightened. "That's a pretty necklace," Emily said softly. "Where did you get it?" The woman looked down at it, her hand instinctively brushing over it. "Oh, this?" she said. "It came with her when we adopted her." Emily felt her breath catch. "Adopted?" she repeated. The woman nodded. "Yes, we adopted her through a private agency earlier this year. It all happened so quickly, but we're so grateful." Emily's knees felt weak. Her voice trembled. "How old is she?" "She'll be 7 months next week," the woman said proudly. "She's growing so fast." Emily forced herself to nod, but her vision was blurring. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you," the woman said kindly. "We named her Samantha." Samantha. Emily's heart ached at the sound of that name. It felt wrong, like a name that didn't belong to the baby in her arms. That wasn't Samantha. That was Sophie. Emily swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "Can I ask, do you know anything about her birth mother?" The woman hesitated. "Not really," she said carefully. "The agency told us it was a closed adoption. The birth mother didn't want contact. We respected that." Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to scream that it was a lie, that she was the mother, that the papers were wrong, that someone had stolen her child, but she couldn't say it. "Not yet." She forced a smile, hiding the storm inside her. "That's wonderful," she said quietly. "She's very loved, I can tell." "Oh yes," the woman said, her eyes soft. "She's our whole world." Emily nodded, but her heart broke as she watched the woman gently kiss the baby's forehead. The baby cooed happily, her tiny hands reaching up. It was her baby. She knew it. Every part of her screamed it. But what could she do? She stood there for another moment before forcing herself to leave. Her steps felt heavy as she pushed her cart toward the door. The world outside looked the same cars, the same clouds, the same air, but nothing felt real anymore. When she got home, she sat in the car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Everything she had believed about that night at the hospital, every word she had been told, it all started to crumble. She pulled out her old hospital file from the drawer later that evening. She hadn't looked at it in months. The pages were yellowing slightly, the corners bent from being opened too many times in those first weeks. She flipped through them slowly. Her eyes landed on the nurse's name scribbled at the bottom of one form. She remembered her face, unkind, calm, reassuring. She had trusted her. The night Sophie was born, that nurse had been the one to take her from the room. The last time Emily saw her baby alive was when the nurse carried her away. She remembered asking, "Can I hold her again?" And the nurse had said, "Of course, soon." But soon never came. That same nurse had handed her a form to sign later, saying it was for the hospital's record. Emily hadn't questioned it. She had been too broken, too numb to read it carefully. Now as she looked at the papers, her stomach twisted. Something about the signature didn't look right. There were dates that didn't match. Her heart pounded. Was it possible? Could someone have taken her baby that night? She picked up her phone and scrolled through the hospital's website, her fingers trembling. The nurse's name wasn't there anymore. She searched again, nothing. It was as if she had disappeared. Emily sat back, tears streaming down her face. She whispered softly, "I'm going to find you." The next morning, she called the hospital asking to speak with someone about her records. The voice on the other end sounded polite but distant. "I'm sorry," the person said, "but those files are confidential beyond the release you already have." Emily's voice shook. "Please, I just need to know what happened to my baby that night." "I understand, ma'am," the voice said gently. "But our system shows that your child was declared deceased. There's nothing further we can release without a court order." She hung up, her heart racing. A court order. That meant she would need help. But who would believe her? She thought of the woman at the store. Kind, unsuspecting, loving that baby as her own. None of this was her fault. She had no idea she might be raising another woman's child. Emily stared at her phone for a long time before typing a message to her friend, one of the few people who had stayed close through her grief. "Can we meet?" she wrote. "I need to tell you something." Her friend replied within minutes. "Of course. Are you okay?" Emily stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I don't know." When they met that evening at a quiet cafe, Emily told her everything about the baby, the necklace, the adoption, and the missing nurse. Her friend listened silently, her eyes wide. When Emily finished, she leaned forward and said softly, "If what you're saying is true, you have to talk to someone, a lawyer, maybe even the police. This isn't something you can ignore." Emily nodded slowly. "I know, but I don't want to take someone's child away. That woman loves her. I could see it." Her friend took her hand gently. "But she's your child too. You deserve the truth." Emily stared down at her coffee cup, her thoughts heavy. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she made a silent promise, no matter how painful it became, she would find out what really happened. The image of that silver heart necklace burned in her mind. She closed her eyes and whispered into the darkness, "I'm coming for you, my little one. I'm not giving up again." Emily didn't sleep much that night. Her thoughts wouldn't stop racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the photo she'd printed. Her baby's old necklace and the one she had seen on that child in the grocery store. They were identical. There was no doubt left in her mind. The question wasn't if that baby was hers anymore. It was how. How had her daughter ended up in someone else's arms? How had everyone convinced her she had lost her child when that clearly wasn't true? She sat at her kitchen table with a notepad and pen, trying to put her thoughts in order. Her handwriting was messy, her hands shaking slightly. She wrote down every detail she could remember from the hospital. The faces, the voices, the timing. She circled the nurse's name 3 times. That name had haunted her since that night. By morning, she had made up her mind. She needed help. She couldn't go to the adoption agency directly, not yet. They would never tell her anything without proof, and she didn't even have legal documents to back her claim. She needed someone who could guide her the right way. After some hesitation, she called her friend again, the one who had been there through everything. When her friend answered, Emily's voice shook slightly. I found something. The adoption agency. The nurse from the hospital works there. There was a pause on the other end. You're sure? Positive, Emily said quietly. I saw her name on their website. Her friend's tone grew serious. Emily, this isn't something you can handle alone anymore. You need to talk to someone who knows the law, maybe a lawyer. Emily hesitated. What if no one believes me? They will, her friend said firmly. You have the photo, the necklace, the records. It's not just in your head. Emily nodded slowly, tears stinging her eyes. I just want the truth, even if it hurts. Her friend offered to come with her, and the next day they went to a small law office downtown. The attorney, a calm, middle-aged man with kind eyes, listened carefully as Emily explained everything, from the hospital to the adoption agency to the necklace. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. This is serious, he said quietly. If what you're saying is true, it could mean your child was taken illegally. Emily's heart pounded. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real. The lawyer continued. We'll need to file a petition to access your full hospital records. If there was wrongdoing, those documents will show inconsistencies. He looked at her gently. It won't be easy, but if you're willing, we can start right away. Emily nodded without hesitation. Please, she said. I've already lost too much time. The days that followed felt endless. Each morning, she waited for a phone call from the lawyer. Each night, she replayed everything in her mind over and over. The waiting was torture. Finally, a week later, her phone rang. It was the lawyer. Emily, he said, his voice calm but firm. I got the records. Her heart jumped. And there are inconsistencies, he said. Dates, signatures, even the nurse's report. It looks like someone altered the documents after they were filed. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling up. So I'm not crazy, she whispered. No, he said softly. You're not. I think you were told a false story that night. Emily felt her whole body tremble. The room around her blurred as she sat down on the couch, trying to breathe. What happens now? I'll contact the authorities, the lawyer said. This needs to go through official channels. But if your child was adopted through a falsified record, we can request DNA testing. Emily's voice broke. That baby? She's mine. I believe you, he said gently. Let's prove it. Over the next few weeks, everything moved both too fast and too slow. Emily met with investigators, answered endless questions, and relived the most painful night of her life over and over. But she did it because the thought of holding her daughter again kept her going. When the police began their part of the investigation, they visited the adoption agency. They didn't tell Emily every detail, but she heard enough. That the nurse had quietly left her hospital job just days after Emily's supposed tragedy, that she had handled several private cases through the agency, and that there were missing or altered documents for more than one child. The truth was starting to surface. One afternoon, the lawyer called her in. Emily, he said, the agency has been notified of the investigation. The family who adopted your daughter has agreed to cooperate. They're open to a DNA test. Emily's hands trembled so hard she could barely hold the phone. They know? Yes, he said gently. The adoptive mother wants to speak with you. When you're ready. Emily's chest ached. The thought of seeing the woman who had been raising her baby filled her with fear, sorrow, and strange gratitude all at once. I want to meet her, she whispered. The meeting took place in a quiet office room a few days later. Emily arrived early, her stomach tight with nerves. She sat in a chair, twisting her hands together. When the door opened, the woman from the grocery store stepped in, holding her baby close. For a moment, the world went silent. The baby's eyes met Emily's, and everything inside her broke. The little girl stared at her curiously, as if trying to recognize something familiar. The woman, the same one Emily had spoken to in the store, looked nervous but kind. Hi, she said softly. I didn't expect to see you like this. Emily tried to speak, but her voice caught. Thank you for coming. They sat across from each other. The baby babbled softly, reaching for a toy. The woman gently smiled, tears already in her eyes. I didn't know, she said quickly. I swear to you, I didn't know. The agency told us everything was legal, that her birth mother had signed away her rights. If I had known. She stopped, shaking her head. I never would have agreed. Emily's throat tightened. I believe you, she said softly. I know you love her. The woman's eyes glistened. She's been my whole world, but I can't imagine what you've been through. Emily looked at the baby. Her soft cheeks, her tiny fingers, the necklace still shining on her chest. I thought she was gone. Emily whispered, tears spilling down her face. For months I mourned her. And then I saw her. Right there in the store. The woman wiped her own tears. When the investigators told us the truth, I couldn't stop crying. I wanted to call you myself. They sat there in silence for a moment, both crying softly, both mothers in different kinds of pain. The baby laughed suddenly, as if sensing the emotion in the room. The sound made both women smile through their tears. The lawyer stepped in gently. The DNA results should be ready soon, he said. But I think you both already know what they'll say. Emily nodded. Her heart already knew. When the results finally came, there were no surprises. The test confirmed what Emily's soul had known from the first moment she heard that cry in the grocery store. The baby was hers. The legal process took time. The agency shut down. The nurse was arrested. But the hardest part wasn't the paperwork or the waiting. It was the emotional storm that followed. The adoptive mother, who had loved that baby as her own, had to face the painful truth that she would have to let her go. Yet through the heartbreak, she stayed kind. She even helped with the transition, refusing to let the child feel the pain of confusion or loss. Emily could never forget that kindness. Weeks later, when the court officially recognized her as the rightful mother, she held her daughter again for the first time since the day she was born. Her baby looked up at her with those same gray-blue eyes, curious, trusting, innocent. Emily whispered softly, "You're home now." The little one smiled and reached up, her tiny fingers brushing against the silver heart on her necklace. Emily closed her eyes, tears falling freely. The sound of her baby's laughter filled the room, warm and bright. A sound she thought she would never hear again. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt whole, and though the road ahead wouldn't be simple, she knew one thing for sure. Love, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way back home. The morning light poured softly through Emily's curtains, warming the little nursery that now smelled faintly of baby powder and fresh flowers. The crib stood by the window, filled with soft toys and pastel blankets. In it, the baby, her daughter, slept peacefully, one tiny hand clutching the silver heart necklace that never left her side. Emily sat quietly in the rocking chair, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and wonder. Every breath her daughter took felt like a miracle. Every soft sound she made felt like a gift the world had almost stolen from her. It had been 2 months since the court returned custody to her. 2 months since her world had shifted from unbearable emptiness to overflowing love. But it wasn't simple. It never would be. The transition had been gentle, just as she'd promised. The adoptive mother, whom Emily now called Grace, though that wasn't her real name, had come to visit several times during those early weeks. It was hard for both of them. Grace would hold the baby close, whispering to her softly, her tears falling silently. Emily never stopped her. She couldn't. There was a bond there, one that no one could erase. One afternoon, as Grace sat beside her on the couch, Emily reached over and took her hand. "You gave her love," she said quietly. "I can never thank you enough for that." Grace smiled through her tears. "And you gave her life. She's lucky to have you." Those words stayed with Emily. They weren't rivals. They were two mothers connected by one innocent child, by love, loss, and something greater than both. In the weeks that followed, Emily learned to be a mother all over again. The nights were long. Sometimes her daughter cried endlessly, unable to sleep. Sometimes Emily would rock her for hours, humming softly, whispering promises that this time she would never be taken away again. And slowly, the pain began to soften. The fear that had once gripped her heart began to fade. Every morning, she would wake up to tiny hands reaching for her, and it made everything worth it. There were moments, though, when she would still find herself staring at her daughter's face and feeling a wave of disbelief. How had fate twisted their lives this way? How many quiet miracles had lined up to bring them back together? She didn't have the answers, but she didn't need them. One evening, she sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Her daughter sat on her lap, giggling as Emily blew gentle raspberries on her tiny fingers. The sound of laughter drifted through the air, soft and warm. Emily looked at her and whispered, "You were never lost, just waiting to be found." A few weeks later, she was asked to give a statement for the ongoing case against the nurse and the agency. It wasn't something she looked forward to, but she knew she had to. The nurse's betrayal had changed so many lives. Not just hers, but other mothers, too. The investigation revealed that several other children had been taken the same way, declared stillborn or surrendered without consent, then placed in secret adoptions for profit. It was heartbreaking. When Emily walked into the courtroom to testify, she felt her legs shaking. She held a small photo of her daughter in her hand, reminding herself why she was there. The nurse sat quietly at the defense table, her face pale, her eyes downcast. Emily spoke honestly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply told the truth. How she had trusted that nurse, how she had been told her baby was gone, and how she had lived every day with a hole in her heart. And then, how one small moment, a random grocery store encounter, changed everything. When she finished, the room was silent. Even the judge looked moved. The nurse never looked up, but Emily didn't need her to. She had already reclaimed what mattered most. The trial ended months later. The agency was permanently shut down, and the nurse received a long sentence. The families who had been affected began to reach out to one another, forming a quiet network of mothers who had survived something unthinkable. Emily met some of them. Their stories were different, but their pain was the same. Together they found comfort in knowing they weren't alone. They even started a small community group, an organization to help mothers verify hospital adoptions and birth records, making sure no one else would suffer the way they had. Emily named it Silver Hearts, after the necklace that had reunited her with her daughter. One afternoon, Grace stopped by to visit. She brought a small box with her, tied neatly with a pale ribbon. "It's for her," Grace said softly, setting it on the table. Emily opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny silver bracelet with her daughter's initials engraved on it. "She'll grow into it someday," Grace said, her smile bittersweet. "I just wanted her to have something from me, too." Emily felt tears fill her eyes. She reached out and hugged Grace tightly. "You'll always be part of her story," she whispered. "Always." They sat together for a while, watching the baby play with her toys on the floor. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was gentle, almost peaceful. Two mothers, bound not by rivalry, but by love. As the seasons changed, Emily began writing again, a habit she had abandoned during the darkest days. She wrote about loss, about faith, about the strange ways life gives back what it once takes away. Sometimes, late at night, she would write letters to her daughter, describing how they had found each other again. She kept them in a small box, promising herself that one day, when her daughter was old enough, she would tell her everything. She wanted her to know the truth, but more importantly, she wanted her to know that she was loved beyond measure, by everyone who had held her, cared for her, and prayed for her. Years later, on a quiet summer morning, Emily sat in the park, watching her little girl, now older, run across the grass with her silver necklace bouncing against her chest. The sunlight caught the charm, making it glimmer. Her laughter filled the air, pure and bright. A woman nearby smiled and said, "She's got such a happy spirit." Emily smiled too. "She's my miracle," she said simply. The woman nodded kindly and walked on. But Emily stayed there, watching her daughter twirl and spin, free and full of life. For a long time, she had lived in shadows, trapped in grief and unanswered questions. But now everything felt clear. The past couldn't be changed. But it had led her here, to this exact moment. Her daughter ran back and threw her tiny arms around Emily's neck, giggling. "Mama, look! I found a butterfly." Emily laughed, lifting her up. "You did?" The little girl nodded proudly, holding out her small hand where a delicate butterfly rested before flying away. Emily looked at her daughter and whispered, "You were my butterfly, too. You came back to me." The child smiled without really understanding, resting her head against her mother's shoulder. The world around them was bright, the breeze gentle, the day full of promise, and for the first time, Emily didn't think about the pain or the loss or the years stolen from her. She just felt peace because love had found its way back. Because miracles, she now knew, didn't always arrive with thunder or light. They sometimes came quietly, wearing a silver heart. Years passed quietly and kindly this time. The once tiny baby who had been taken from Emily's arms was now a bright, curious little girl with wild curls and a laugh that filled every room. Her name was Lily, the name Emily had chosen for her the night she was born, the name she had whispered to the stars when she thought her daughter was gone. Now, Lily said it herself proudly. "Lily," she'd tell strangers with a smile. "That's me." Their house was small but full of warmth. There were drawings taped to the fridge, stacks of picture books beside the couch, and a soft blanket that smelled faintly of lavender. Emily had learned that home wasn't about size or perfection. It was about safety, laughter, and the feeling of being seen. Sometimes when Lily slept, Emily would sit by her bed and watch her breathe. There were still nights she woke up in tears, memories sneaking back from the time she thought her baby had died. But each time she would whisper softly, "You're here now. You're safe." And somehow that made the memories fade. Emily often thought about Grace, the woman who had raised Lily during her lost months. They still spoke sometimes, usually through short messages or video calls. Grace never tried to interfere, but she never disappeared completely either. She sent birthday cards, sometimes little gifts, but always with a note that said, "Only if it's okay with you." It always was. Emily understood something she hadn't before. Love doesn't have limits. Lily was lucky. She had two women who loved her in different ways. And instead of being something to fear, that became something to celebrate. One afternoon when Lily turned 5, Grace came to visit for the first time in almost a year. She brought a basket of cupcakes and a small box wrapped in pink paper. Lily ran up to her excitedly, calling out, "Auntie Grace." Grace smiled, her eyes misty. "You've gotten so big," she said softly. Emily stood nearby, watching them hug. It was bittersweet but peaceful. When Grace handed Lily the gift, she opened it carefully. Inside was a little book, a story Grace had written herself called The Girl with the Silver Heart. Lily looked up. "It's me?" Grace nodded. "It's about a brave little girl who helped two hearts find their way home." Emily had to turn away to hide her tears. Later that night, when Lily was asleep, Emily walked Grace out to her car. The air was cool, the sky full of stars. "Thank you," Emily said softly. Grace shook her head. "No, thank you. You've given her everything she deserves." They stood there for a moment, two women bound forever by the same child, neither trying to replace the other, just grateful that love had found a way to heal them both. Months turned into years. Lily started school. She loved painting, collecting shiny rocks and asking 1,000 questions a day. One afternoon she came home from kindergarten holding a small paper heart she had made. On it were two stick figures, one taller, one smaller, holding hands. Above them, in bright crayon letters, she had written, "Me and Mama forever." Emily put it on the fridge, right next to the grocery list and Lily's latest drawing of a rainbow. That night, as she tucked her daughter into bed, Lily asked sleepily, "Mama, when I was a baby, was I tiny?" Emily smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. "So tiny I could hold you in one arm." Lily giggled. "And did I cry?" "Oh yes," Emily said with a laugh. "A lot." Lily's eyes softened. "Did you cry too?" Emily paused. Then she nodded. "I did. But now I cry happy tears. Why?" "Because I get to love you every day," she whispered. Lily smiled sleepily. "I love you too, Mama." Moments later, she was fast asleep, her silver necklace resting against her chest. The same necklace that had once led Emily back to her. Years later, when Lily turned 10, Emily told her the truth, gently, simply, and with love. They sat on the porch one summer evening, the sky painted orange and gold. Emily told her how she had thought she lost her, how a kind woman had raised her, and how fate brought them back together. Lily listened quietly, her little hands folded in her lap. When Emily finished, Lily didn't speak for a moment. Then she said softly, "So I have two moms?" Emily nodded. "Yes, two people who loved you more than anything." Lily smiled, her eyes bright. "That's not sad. That's lucky." Emily felt her throat tighten. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking just a little. Very lucky. The story of what happened, the nurse, the agency, the truth, and eventually made the news. Emily didn't want fame or sympathy, but she agreed to share her experience so others could learn from it. Her story helped uncover more cases, and hospitals began changing their procedures. She was invited to speak at a community event for mothers, where she stood on a small stage, holding the silver heart necklace between her fingers as she spoke. I used to think pain was the end of a story, she told the crowd, but sometimes it's only the beginning of something beautiful. Sometimes loss opens the door for love to return in a way you never expected. The audience was silent, some wiping away tears. When she stepped off the stage, she spotted Grace sitting in the crowd, smiling proudly, and beside her, in the front row, was Lily, waving wildly, her necklace catching the light. Years later still, when Lily was grown and ready to leave for college, Emily stood in her room surrounded by boxes. Lily laughed softly. "You're going to cry, aren't you?" Emily smiled through her tears. "Maybe a little." Lily hugged her tightly. "Don't be sad, Mama, I'm not going far. And you taught me to be brave." Emily held her close. "I'm not sad," she whispered. "Just proud." Before she left, Lily handed her something. The silver heart necklace. "You should keep it for now," she said. "You found me with it. Maybe one day it'll help someone else find their way." Emily held it in her palm, tears streaming down her face. "I'll keep it safe." That night, alone in the quiet house, Emily sat by the window holding the necklace. The moonlight touched it gently, making it shimmer like it had all those years ago. She smiled, remembering the little baby who once wore it, and the brave young woman she had become. Life had come full circle. Emily whispered softly, "Thank you for finding your way back to me." And as the night wrapped around her, she felt it, not the ache of what she'd lost, but the peace of everything she'd found.